excited to have you here tonight to talk about mindfulness. I know it's been a crazy year for a lot of people, so I think that this is a really important topic leading into the summer, and hopefully people have some time to rest and reset. So hopefully these strategies will be really helpful for them, not only for their own personal lives, but for implementing it in therapy as well. So this is called Peace of Mind Using Mindfulness to Prevent Burnout for SLPs. And this is the agenda for today. So this is approved for ASHA CEUs. So we have to go over like the agenda and the learning objectives, but we'll go through that quickly and then get to the good stuff. So we're going to do some introductions and backgrounds. Marie already helped me out while I was broadcasting to Facebook and introduced herself. And then we're going to talk about mindfulness and burnout and what that looks like. I know we've all felt it, but can we identify it before it happens? And then we'll talk about preventing burnout and the important and ways to set boundaries, how to incorporate mindfulness during speech sessions, and then we'll wrap up with a Q&A. But feel free to ask any questions that you have throughout the presentation. So Maria already had the opportunity to introduce herself, but if you are just coming on, here she is again, and you can read some of the main points. But my name is Vanita Litvack. If you're not familiar, I have a passion for AAC, assistive technology, and literacy. I've been able to present at ASHA. I co-authored a book series for children with autism. I'm the host of the Speechy Side Up podcast, and I'm a mom to an 8-month-old daughter who we just got back from the pediatrician. So if I'm a little bit frazzled, that's why, but she's okay, thank goodness. And she's off to bed now with Dada. So we're able to do this, which is great. So our learning outcomes today, by the end of this session, we hope that you'll be able to define mindfulness and 2 key principles, describe what burnout can look like for you and SLPs in general, identify 3 ways to prevent burnout, explain the importance of setting boundaries in the workplace, and describe 3 ways that SLPs can incorporate mindfulness in therapy sessions. All right, Marie, take it away.
All right. Well, the first point here is asking what is mindfulness. And I thought it would be really fun to ask those of you watching to first maybe type in the chat, right, Vanita? Yeah, in the chat, what you feel mindfulness is, because it's really interesting sometimes to get other perspectives. And as I talk about what I've learned mindfulness to be for myself and in conversations with other mental health experts and other speech pathologists, it's just cool to see what others think. So feel free to go ahead and type in the chat what you feel mindfulness is, or how you maybe what the concept is to you. Heather says being present in the moment, being present from Dawn. By the way, hi Nina, I see you in there. Amy, that it's the ability to be aware and present of where you are at any given time. So it sounds like there's a theme with being present, which is yes. And we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but that's a whole other reason why, I talk a lot about gratitude on my social media platforms, because that's kind of a gateway into that present mind or present mindset. And so kind of a way to think of it is, and this is something I learned from my friend Rachel Musial, if you know her from Connections with Rach. She is another fellow speech pathologist who talks a lot about mindfulness. And together we've had conversations where it's kind of been really, it's really opened my eyes to think about it in terms of, instead of thinking about your mind being full, which is what the word is saying, mindful, you are actually, your mind is not full, it's empty in the sense that you're not preoccupied with things. And like all of you are saying, you're present in the moment. And I love how Amy put it, it's the ability to be aware and present of where you are at any given time, because it's that awareness. You're not necessarily overthinking. You're not thinking about what is coming. You're not thinking about maybe what just happened and maybe being super reactionary. You're just aware. And a big part of it too is having really strong self-awareness. So knowing kind of what your environment is set up as, and then knowing how you can provide maybe a positive energy, maybe how you're in that moment. I know I've been in situations where I've come into, a family gathering or something, and maybe I'm anxious. And so I have more of kind of that tense, maybe it's a negative energy, and having an awareness at the very least of me bringing that energy in has helped me kind of practice that mindfulness in a moment and use the things that we'll talk about in a little bit to be able to switch over and maybe just clear my mind, maybe just focus on being present. And I did want to note that it doesn't always mean that you're happy. You know, if you kind of equate it to, well, if I were happy, I'd be more mindful. If I were more mindful, I'd be more happy. Mindfulness is just that present being kind of state where you're aware, like I said, you're aware if you're feeling stressed, you're aware if you're feeling negative. Recently, at the end of the school year for me, I hit a phase of burnout. For this is probably the third or fourth time as a speech pathologist I've hit it, but it was the first time that I actually felt like I was being mindful, because I was in the moment very aware of feeling burnt out, instead of avoiding it, or instead of, just constantly going into work, not thinking about why I was there and not focusing on, being able to provide for my students because I was so burnt out, or all those kinds of things. So it's not always just that you don't have to be happy to be mindful. You can be mindful and just be aware of how you are in that present state. So I love those answers. Thank you guys so much. I don't know, Anita, if I missed anything there, but or if we're good to go on. Yeah. So this next one is how we can talk about together how SLPs can be more mindful. So again, I'm going to throw a quick question to the audience, and I love that you guys, thank you so much for interacting and responding, because this makes it a lot of fun for me to get your perspectives. But I want to ask you all how you practice self-care. So feel free again in the chat and just let me know maybe ways that you practice self-care, ways you feel like you practice mindfulness, whether it's on a regular basis, whether it's something that you do every once in a while, just so we can all share some ideas here, because I'm going to give you some as well. So I'll wait a couple seconds because I know sometimes there might be a delay. There we go. Oh, thanks, Benita. Exercise and meditation. Yes, such good ones. I actually noticed that when I move my body, but personally, if I increase my workout routine, maybe during times of stress, it actually really helps me relieve that stress. That's not for everybody. Sometimes people need to do less of that, but for me, that works. I use Headspace app. Oh my gosh, yes, those apps are amazing. The Headspace app, the Calm app, those are really great. And yep, I was just going to say, there's a free account for educators. Thank you, Heather. There is a free account. And I know I was using something different. I used the Downward Dog Yoga app because I wanted to implement yoga in the last year with COVID and being in a pandemic. And that really helped. That was free for a while because of that for educators too. So there's always good things for educators out there. Going on a walk, maintaining a schedule, Amy, that's awesome. And that's really important for some people. Some people maybe get too tense about a schedule, but some people I need a schedule and I need lists. I lean on my lists, especially when I'm more stressed. Protect non-negotiables. Yep, that's like protecting your energy, right? You're doing things and making sure you have things in your environment that serve you. Gratitude journaling, yay! Getting a massage, yes. And getting enough sleep. Good. Yes, Laura. Thank you for bringing that up because I might have forgotten, but that's a huge one for me, making sure I get enough sleep. Thank you guys so much for these answers. I love them.
I like the getting enough sleep. That's an important one.
That is so important. And that's my number one. And that's actually, the people in my life will ask me if I'm seeming a little bit more negative or off. That's kind of what people that know me well know to ask, like, did you get enough sleep? Are you getting enough sleep regularly? That's my thing, sleep. Yeah, I love it. And then here's just some other ideas. Like I said, I picked up yoga. I love having a consistent yoga practice. I do once a week. Some people do more. Journaling, if you know me, I journal twice a day. That is my mindfulness journaling routine. That is my biggest thing that's why I've created a journal that goes along with these concepts. And specifically for me, it's gratitude journaling, but there's all kinds of ways you can do gratitude journaling. It doesn't have to just be listing, which I'll get into in a minute, but that's a huge one. Taking walks, maybe stepping away in the middle of your day from an email and just going on a walk outside. If it's a beautiful day, the sun is great for you. It's got a good source of energy. If you just take a quick walk, meditation, body scans are really great. This is one of my favorites, and I actually incorporated it into the journal in one of my prompts because it's really important to be, again, for that awareness, to be kind of, unified with your body and knowing what you're feeling, and kind of connecting your emotions to maybe anything, any aches and pains or things that are going on in your body. Practicing gratitude, that's my biggest thing, I think, for being present. There is a TED Talk that I really recommend by David Steindl-Ronst, I think is how you pronounce it. It's a German name, but he has a TED Talk where he talks about gratitude being the source of happiness, essentially. But the reason he's saying that is because when you come from a place of gratitude and you practice it consistently, you actually train your mind to always come from this basically mindset of having enough, having an abundance of things and not being in fear of not having, of being more open and accepting to others' differences and perspectives. So that's really huge. And then deep breathing exercises are also really great. Something that helps me when I need to transition, if I have a mindset, maybe that if I am reacting to an email I got, that I don't agree with, sometimes doing that box breathing is something that can really help you kind of just, one, calm down, but also transition your mindset and maybe start to problem solve. Maybe doing that will remind you to step away from your computer and not have an emotional reaction right away or something like that. That box breathing, by the way, if you're not familiar, is where I do 6, 6, and 6. So you do, is it 6? So you inhale for 6 seconds, you hold the breath for 6 seconds, you exhale for 6 seconds, and you hold that again for 6 seconds. So you kind of just, it's like going in a box. But those are things that I find really, really helpful. I do have, I'm going to throw it out there too. And I know we put some links in the PowerPoint at the end, Vanita.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay. But I did create a resource. It's a free resource on my website where it's a questionnaire that you can go through to kind of check in with yourself that hits a bunch of different points of being mindful, of being in tune with yourself and that awareness. So feel free to go check that out. And again, that will be linked at the end. And it's a free resource. So yay.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there a difference between meditation and mindfulness? Because I recently heard that it's like they're not the same.
And that's not necessarily something I'm a complete expert in, but I would say I feel like meditation is something that kind of helps you develop that awareness and maybe that mindfulness. I think there's different, and there's a book, it's called Mindful Meditation. I think that's what it's called. And the author has like a variety, every chapter actually is research-based narrative on why certain types of meditation are beneficial, whether it's for mindfulness or whether it's just for the sake of meditation or maybe relaxation. So I would say, based on what I've experienced as far as meditation, sometimes it might just purely be for the relaxation, but it is a method of maybe practicing self-care if you're doing it regularly for that goal of being more mindful, and you are, there might be certain meditations that you're choosing to partake in that are kind of raising your awareness, then I would say yes to that. So it's probably a variety, because like I know I've like on the Calm app, there's specific meditation just to put you to sleep, which isn't a bad thing, and that leads to a healthy outcome. Yeah. So I hope I answered that question okay.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It seems like the means to get to the goal, which is to be
Yeah,
like mindful. It's one way. Okay, yeah. And then the TED talk that you mentioned, I did you share that with me before? Because if you did, then it's going to be in our handout.
I might have. I might
Okay.
have
If
forgotten to
not,
send you that link, but
okay, yeah, that would be great. We can share it in the
yeah.
follow-up email for people.
Okay, perfect. I'll send you that as soon as we're done.
Awesome. All right. So let's talk about burnout. I know that's a hot topic. What is
it
it?
it is a hot topic, and um, it's one of those things that it's very subjective. Like how I might come across burnout might be different than how Vanita comes across burnout or anybody else here. Um, for me, overall, it's fatigue. So I might be physically tired. I might be mentally tired. Like I might have brain fog. I I didn't even read it, and I knew what I was going to say. Um, and and then I wrote it. You might be moody. I know my motivation will lack, and one of the ways that I can quickly now, I mean, it wasn't always this way, but one of the ways I can quickly see, okay, I'm feeling a little bit burned out is because I don't want to go to work, which I mean, there are days, right? After a really great weekend or something, Monday morning comes and you're like, oh, I have 3 IEP meetings today. I don't want to really sit in those. I want to be back out at the beach or whatever it is, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, like consistently every day on days, I've maybe had fun things planned for my kids. And I'm just like, I don't want to necessarily, I don't feel the drive. I don't necessarily want to be present in those moments. Another way that I've figured out, maybe I'm in a state of burnout is when I'm going session after session and I'm thinking about everything else that needs to get done and I'm not being present with my kids. Because as a speech pathologist, my why and my reason for being there is my clients or my students. So when I'm not as focused on them, that's when I'm kind of like, okay, this is what it looks like for me. I'm distracted. I'm thinking about those emails that are coming in, and things like that. And then also, and that kind of goes with this point of being overly consumed with something. But even I've noticed for myself after work hours, I'm still talking or even thinking about all these little details about the day that have stressed me out. Maybe I'm not talking about anything else, or maybe I'm not bringing up anything good that has happened in the day because I'm just overly consumed with the things that are burning me out. So those are some of the ways that I've definitely come across burnout. And even in talking with other professionals, it seems to be a lot of that. That big one is the fatigue, I think, the loss of energy. Um, I don't know. I don't know, Vanita, if you've experienced it, what you've experienced, but if those are similar things.
Oh yeah. I'm curious. I
Yeah,
would like to see the like what some of the attendees,
sure.
if they've experienced burnout and like maybe how many years they're into their field. Because I know I'm
I like
what,
that.
7 years and I've
Mhm.
definitely experienced burnout multiple times, which is crazy. I'm glad that
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about how we can prevent burnout, but it sounds like you've had burnout even with your job now. So like I guess you
Yeah.
were able to bounce back from it.
I felt like, because now I'm on summer break, so that's nice. I feel like it kind of was one of those things where I felt burnt out, and then I knew, I was like, hey, well, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I have to get to, May, whatever, the end of the last day of school. But I remember kind of thinking, I want to be like, I want to get through it, and I want to then still be, going on with the school year with my students and not feeling this burnout at the end of their school year. And so, yeah, I definitely want to talk about those ways. Everybody watching, feel free though in the chat to put in your years of experience if you like. And how many times, Vanita? Is that what you said?
Or just like if
Or
you've
just
experienced burnout
if you've experienced
before.
burnout? I know I'm 5 years in, so I've gone through a couple bouts of burnout. Almost 21 years, burnout occurs less and less as I continue. And that's something good to hear.
Yeah, that is good. I guess maybe
um,
I wonder, I'm like assuming maybe like Amy's found like her niche and,
yeah.
has kind of fallen into place with something she really enjoys. That's Good. Amy, I don't
It
know if you
is
want to
good.
elaborate on that anymore.
Yeah. And then Nina nearing 40 years, and burnout is a continuum, and I have lost count of how many times. Um, yeah. And I think, sometimes burnout happens even when we're like so passionate and so excited. I've even, was starting my own business. I've gotten a little burned out just because I've been so excited to create or to research um, new things. And then I find myself staying up really late, on my computer, getting that blue light when I'm not supposed to be, not getting enough sleep. And I'm very excited, and that'll burn you out too. So I think with anything, we're going to talk about preventing, but those boundaries come into play and figuring out how that can work. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Oh,
Uh,
Amy expanded a little bit
oh,
on.
nice. I'm in a
I love
private
what she said. I'm more
practice.
protective of the peace I need. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a huge part of it. And I think that's what helped me this last time around when I started feeling burnt out. I just knew like, okay, this is where I'm drawing my lines, because I need to get back to a different mindset. Nina, too much of a good thing is still too much. Exactly. One thing we'll talk about our boundaries, because our passion can go make it easy to stay in burnout. Yeah. So boundaries, they're huge, even when even if you own your own practice or your own business or whatever it is. Yeah. So we can, oh, you've already got me to the next slide, right? Or no?
Yep. So let's
Okay.
talk about setting boundaries, because it's come up a couple of times so far. So it's
Yeah.
obviously, a big one.
Yeah. Um, and as I go along here, feel free, anybody, to talk about if there's any of these points maybe you have trouble with setting boundaries, like in terms of setting these kinds of boundaries at work, because I think we all might have different struggles in these areas. And even if maybe there's an area you never thought of and you're like, oh, I want to try that, feel free to put it in the chat, because um, it's fun to get to talk back. Um, okay, so first and foremost, it is important to always come back to this place of knowing, okay, well, I'm more than an SLP, or I'm more than whatever this task maybe that's putting a lot of pressure on me really is. So like for me, for instance, when I was overconsumed with the things at work that were maybe making me feel a little bit more burnt out, I had to get to a place where I was like, well, this isn't my end all be all. I also, outside of this, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I can spend time with my family. I, like to be out in nature, or I like to create gratitude journals and talk about those things, and just things like that are maybe a little bit outside of that realm of being an SLP, that kind of take my SLP hat off. One thing for me that really helped was I was in, and this is pre-COVID, and once it's back, I will be back in it, but I did comedy improv once a week. And that was a really great way. It was always on Wednesdays too, which was perfect, because it really forced me to take off my SLP hat, be in a completely different character mode. Essentially, I went through many characters every Wednesday, in different scenes, and play. And it was a really great way for me, again, to just kind of take a break. So doing things like that, or having hobbies or spending time with family, are really great ways to remind yourself of that. Another big one, and I recently did a post about this, but don't check your email outside of work. Now, this might be a personal thing for me, but if this resonates with any of you, or you've maybe thought, oh, you know what, I'm going to try and set that firm boundary for myself, then great. If it doesn't affect you too much and you do check your email outside of work, I'm not telling you shouldn't. I'm just saying this is something that I've learned, and when talking to others, this has really helped some of us set that boundary. So my hours, or my contract hours for my school day, are when I allow myself to check my email. And a way that this helped me my first year, my CF year, I had my Outlook app on my phone and thought, yay, I have a work email on my phone. And oh my gosh, I have an email, I'm important, and I would check it. and it'd be 7 o'clock at night and I'd be eating dinner and I'd be like, oh my gosh, somebody can't read the IEP. I need to get on my computer and do this or whatever. And while that is important, maybe the IEP meeting wasn't till 10:30 the next morning, and I would have had plenty of time to see that email and figure it out the next morning. But I, did something that got a little bit stressful outside of my workday, and I didn't necessarily need to be paying as much attention to it. And I noticed once I took that app off my phone, my second year, I was a lot less stressed. So for me personally, those emails, because I get sucked into the email vortex very quickly. Maybe some people don't, but for me, once I check my email, I get distracted or consumed with whatever that email was that I opened. Another thing that I do personally that I forget where I learned this. An SLP on Instagram a couple years ago suggested this, and I tried it. And she was saying, try not to check your email the first thing in the morning. Do like 2 sessions. And this is obviously as a school-based SLP. So get to work, prep for the day, see 2 of my sessions, and then check your email. And what I figured out is that's really helpful is that really helps me start my day with a clear focus, which every day my focus is my students. And so for me, it was really helpful to, not get sucked into the email vortex and start freaking out about something that might be happening that isn't necessarily going to affect my immediate situation or my students or whatever. So unless I know, no, I have to check my email because there's something really important happening, or a teacher tells me, hey, can you respond to that email or whatever, then I wait. And for me personally, it's been fine. I haven't gotten into any kind of trouble, and it's been really healthy for me. Again, to start my day off playing and we're positive and I'm focused on the kids, and then I can start to focus on those emails. But I'm able to compartmentalize a little bit better if I don't check them first thing in the day. Somebody recently also reminded me when I posted about this on social media, they said, also don't check social media first thing in the morning. And yes, that's another one. So that's another really great reminder. And same thing, I try not to even deal with social media until later in the day. Another one, don't bring work home. Sometimes I think as a school-based SLP, we find ourselves in this, but if I don't, I will not get it done kind of mentality. And I can relate and understand to that, but I've also learned how to just know my time, kind of figure out time management, which I think does come maybe 4 to 5 years, when you're in it, if you're in the schools, because though that time management can be really tedious and hard, especially if you're moving around schools, because I split schools my first year. So I know that's really hard with scheduling and things like that. But I have set this boundary for myself to not bring work home, to utilize times during my day that I can do paperwork, or which the next point is self-advocacy. When I am drowning in paperwork, reaching out to the powers that be and saying, I need an assistant to come and help me make up sessions, or, because I have this many IEPs I just got, or initial evaluations that just got handed to me. And I can't manage both right now in this season. So I might need help. So that self-advocacy is really important and kind of goes hand in hand with that time management. And then say no. Another thing I've learned recently is the beauty of saying no. And it's definitely counterintuitive to my improv learning, because in improv, if anybody's familiar, the famous first rule of improv is to say yes. And you're in a scene and you say yes. And while that is a great way to go about things in life, it makes for a lot of fun in an improv scene. If you only are saying yes to things and you can't handle all these things that are stacking up on your plate, then you will be overwhelmed. So knowing what you can do in a given time is really beneficial. You can say yes, but you can give a boundary. So you can say yes to something, but maybe say, but I can do this much, or but I will get it done, by this date. So there are ways. But another thing about saying no, and I think it was it was Amy that kind of noted that, like, you need to know what keeps you in the right place. Saying no is a big part of setting boundaries, because maybe you're saying no to things that don't, I, for lack of a better term, that don't serve you, right? That don't pour into your cup or fill your cup, that don't allow you to practice self-care. And this is very subjective. For me, if I say no to something, maybe it's because it's not going to allow me to get all my sleep that I need to function. Maybe it's maybe it's a social event that I know, I can be an introvert. So I know I can probably only handle one big social event every 2 weeks, which sounds kind of crazy. But I just came from having back-to-back weddings every weekend. So I had to decompress a lot, but I just know for me, if I'm able to say no to certain things, that will help me function at my highest. So that's what I mean by say no. Because sometimes I know with the job, sometimes our job has, and there's things that we do. That's what falls under our job jurisdiction. We can't always say no, especially when you're a school district employee. But if you kind of know where to set those boundaries ahead of time, it's really helpful. I know that Kim mentioned that she struggles with leaving work on time, billing, paperwork. Yeah, I know this. I feel this to my core. People say it will be there tomorrow, which doesn't help. I end up doing more paperwork than planning. I often have meetings in the morning. So, and maybe for Kim, and I don't know this, but maybe staying a little bit after work, not that I want to condone staying after hours, but if that works for you and it doesn't drive you to feeling burnt out, and that's how you've set up your time management, then, that I think is okay, in a sense of, where you're setting your boundaries. But if it's, if it's an area where that maybe you could use help or you could advocate for yourself, that's kind of what I would definitely recommend. Because I think a part of it that gets me frustrated, and I've stayed late too, so I know this, even this past year, especially when we went back to a hybrid model, because things were new and different and I had new kinds of paperwork to do. And I was staying late, or I would stay late for meetings, and 3-4 hour meetings. And it gets to some point, to me, a little bit in the sense of, and I don't want to necessarily talk about money, but I'm getting paid a certain amount for the job that I'm doing. And so I want to be clear when I do help or do ask for that help or assistance in the form of an SLPA, which I know not every state or district has, but maybe it's another SLP that needs to come in, right, and help out and take part of the caseload. But I know when I present those kinds of things in terms of that self-advocacy, I'm presenting a workload. I'm saying, look, this is how I spend my day, and I need this time for these things to be an effective clinician. So this is why I'm asking for this amount of help. But I do know that struggle, Kim, very well. It is a part of the time management. And I don't always like the term "it'll be there tomorrow" either, especially now that I have started a business. I hate telling myself it'll be there tomorrow, because sometimes I have other things I want to do tomorrow, or I have other plans. So I do get that.
Yeah, I think I was the same way, but I like that you validated for her that, like, if it's working for her, then it's okay. Because I think that we probably have this like tug and pull of like, well, this is what people tell me I'm supposed to do, but this is what feels good to me because it's time that I'm not interrupted. And I can really focus on what needs to be done and plan for the next day. So I'm not like stressed. I feel good going into the next day. I don't know how Kim actually feels about it, but
I know.
I felt good about that, like, either coming in a little earlier or staying a little later, because it helped me organize my thoughts.
And I actually, when I was feeling the most burnt out this last end of the school year, I actually started coming in earlier, like than I was supposed to, which helped me kind of one, because I work in a pod with all the teachers. So the minute, and because I'm one speech therapist for all 6 of the teachers in our preschool program. So the minute they get there, there's, I have 6 people that want to ask me questions because, we have this referral, we have this meeting coming up, we have this. And I'm like, okay, I just need to collect my thoughts. So I totally, like you said, Benita, sometimes it's the time in the day where if I stay 30 minutes after, or even an hour, or I get there a little bit early, that's when I can get things done without interruptions, and getting distracted. So if it works for you, it works for you. And yeah, you can't let what, if somebody's telling you you shouldn't do that, but you feel okay and you're not, stressed out, then it's okay.
Yeah. Kim actually elaborated on it. She said it's not working for her. So.
Oh, yeah. I do recommend, if you can, and you feel comfortable doing it, to, talk to, sometimes it takes a lot of talking to, like, kind of that squeaky wheel gets the grease thing. But if you present it in a, professional, very, like, again, that breakdown of what you're doing and how much time, and maybe manpower these things do need, it can be helpful to advocate for yourself. I do think that in our field, when I've talked to other school-based SLPs, sometimes we don't all feel that we can advocate for ourselves. And it breaks my heart a little bit. I'm not saying, Kim, that you don't feel that way or that you haven't tried. I don't know, but I definitely think that's a huge area that gets a little bit, we don't talk about it enough, that ability to really talk about what we do and what it takes to do our jobs.
Yeah. Well, first off, I can't believe that you did improv. That's really cool. And it's so different. I should try that.
You should. I think everybody should.
Yeah. And I love the technique of like waiting to check your email after 2 sessions. That's a really great tip. And I was going to ask you, like, do you have some effective ways of saying no? And then you started giving some examples of no, but and then, kind of going from there. I've also heard of people, like saying, like, can I get back to you? So like not having to give a yes or no answer right then, like just putting a pause on it, because I used to be a yes person to like everything because I wanted to just make everybody happy. I was a people pleaser. And then I realized, or I heard that you could just, put a pause on it and then formulate a better answer so that you're not feeling guilty about your response or saying no. And it worked really well too.
Yeah, I love that a lot. The pause.
Yes.
Pause.
All right. So let's talk about how we can incorporate mindfulness in therapy, or maybe people have already done it.
Yeah. And if, again, another opportunity to chat, if you have any or have any ideas of how to incorporate mindfulness in your sessions, please feel free to put them in the chat as I go. Or as I go, if there's any of these ways that you want to start using, or haven't thought about, but are like, okay, I'm going to try that for my next session or whatever it is, feel free to put that in too, so we can talk about it. But using these strategies, it's important, first and foremost, obviously, for me being here to share these things with you, because I want all SLPs to feel this able to practice mindfulness on the regular for yourselves, for your families, and for you, and then for your students too, all those who are around you and in your environments and the people that you serve and all those things. But it's also definitely important to me to practice mindfulness in some form with my students, and to share ways that maybe you can as well, because I work with preschoolers. So I mainly know preschool world. I have worked with elementary and middle school age students in the past, but preschool is the language I speak. And I know for my little ones, while it's maybe a little bit more difficult for them to really understand their own emotions, because this is like their social emotional development is it's at that cusp of where their language is, their language expression is starting to flourish, but then they have these emotions and they don't know why, and we don't know why. And Sometimes we cry, sometimes we laugh, sometimes we want to yell, sometimes we want to maybe, hit or kick or things. There's all kinds of things that are happening, and they're big emotions and they're valid emotions. And so it's important that my students, can come to a session, and if they are not feeling happy, or they, not even if they're not happy, but if they are just kind of discontented somehow, it's important for us to be able to have some kind of a way to talk about it or to express it, and to be present together in those moments. And then for them to be able to go back to their classrooms, and for me to share these kinds of things with the teachers is really helpful too, because they can utilize the same strategies. And so some of the ways that I like to do that are with maybe visuals, I have every time we redirect attention to the task is bringing mindfulness into therapy. I like that because you're bringing that presence back in. That's really good. Nina is adding it more during ACT therapy with children and adolescents who stutter. It's challenging at first, but easier as we desensitize and make it a matter of fact thing that we do in therapy. Yeah, I love that, right? So you're doing things kind of on the regular with them, just like you would be doing with yourself. And it's just something we do. So something I've done, and that's why I was starting with bringing up visuals, is by having affirmations that we do. And the kids, you can use affirmation cards. There's a lot out there for kids. But I found some free ones that I use, and I maybe let them pull a card, or I just say, look at the monster. It's from my friend Rachel, from Connections with Rach. And there's a little monster, doing something. So we can say, look at the monster, he is happy, or, he's saying, I am brave. And they might repeat it. We might talk about, or I might talk about what it's like to be brave, or what it's like to be a kind friend. But meeting a child where they're at, which is my first point here, is really important too, because again, there's all these emotions that are getting brought up at different times of the day even. And so just kind of, if they're coming in, maybe they are a little bit, bouncy and wiggly, and just, you can kind of see there may be some agitation or something, kind of trying to understand how the environment is set up. Maybe it's a sensory thing, but that's obviously causing, that agitation or irritation to something, and that doesn't feel good for them. And so figuring out what that is, and maybe talking it through as you figure out what in the room, or what maybe just happened in the classroom, in what way that could have caused that. And then I like to do breathing exercises. This is something I started doing actually when I was in elementary school. I had this big rug in my room that I brought in, very colorful and fun for the kids. So we would lay down on it and we would do belly breaths before speech. So that was really fun because it just brought us to a calm place together. And it was, I would ask them, how many do you want to do? Or you could roll a dice and, how many breaths are we going to take? For some of them, I might say, are we going to do monster breaths? Are we going to do, and just come up with different ways. We're going to dinosaur breaths. Like, how do you want to breathe, or whatever it is, and make it fun, but just something that gets them kind of grounded and present. Drawing and coloring. So I actually have, and this is linked as well, I have some freebies on my website with gratitude prompts. Essentially, it's like kids' gratitude prompts they're taken straight out of my kids' journal that I created. And they're just open spaces with prompts at the top. So for my kids, I'll read it and I'll say, what made you happy today? But there's a lot of different ones. So maybe how did you help your teacher? How did you help your friend today? And they can draw it. If they're older and they can write it. But these are fun ways to kind of incorporate that mindfulness, maybe for 5 minutes at the end of a session or at the beginning. I had somebody recently share a picture with me of how she used it. She actually sent it home as like a homework assignment for her client to do after their private practice session. So that was really cool too. And then acknowledging emotions. I had a student that he was very visibly upset, and I didn't know why, a little 4-year-old. and he kept, like, he was crying. He looked like he wanted to cry, and I didn't know why. And he said, "No, I'm happy. I'm okay. I'm happy." And I was like, for a 4-year-old to think it's not a good, like, it's not good to be sad was breaking my heart. And I had to tell him, it's okay if you're sad. I feel sad sometimes. And that's when I pull out my, the emotional thermometer. I have a cute one that's the Inside Out characters, because all my kids will relate to that. So I talked about, oh, sometimes we're sad, and that's okay. And if you feel happy, you can tell me when you're happy. And if you feel mad, you can tell me when you're mad. So just acknowledging that all emotions are, like I said earlier, they're valid, and then kind of meeting them where they're at. And if they're sad, maybe talking about, okay, what kinds of things do you like to do when you're happy? And maybe we can do those things instead. And that kind of right there, like for me, if I was maybe angry, I might go take a walk outside. Maybe for a little one, he wants to play with the cars. Okay, let's play with the cars. I'm not going to force you to do something that is just going to aid to your upset right now. If if we can talk about your emotions and we know what helps you maybe shift a little bit and feel better, let's do that. So I've noticed with my kids, it's really important when I kind of share that with them. I had another, and I come from that growth mindset, too, where, it's like, yes, we can do it. And we're allowed to be sad. Sometimes we're mad, and those kinds of things. And I'm not happy right now, but I will be later, kind of a thing. So kind of teaching them that language too can be really helpful. I had another little one who was having a hard time. He was very unintelligible. I suspected, I wasn't 100% sure, but maybe some apraxia. And he was another preschooler that he was pretty aware of how unintelligible he was, and it frustrated him. And one day we were practicing his sounds, and he said, "I can't do it." And that right there was another opportunity for me to acknowledge and for me to stop what we were doing. And we actually did a drawing. We turned it over and we pulled out, let's draw about what makes us happy. And we both drew about it. And then we went back to we got back to the other activity. But even if we hadn't gotten back to it in the session, I would not have cared, because again, it's that being present and that engagement that we sometimes need in order to work on our speech goals. And if we're not all there that day, that's okay. We can still have a what I would say would be a positive session, right? Even if we're not feeling the greatest, at least we got to stop and practice some of that mindfulness too. So
I love that. I bet you're an awesome SLP.
oh,
I like, as you're talking, I'm like, man, if I needed an SLP, I wish it would be like Miss Marie.
oh, thanks.
You sound like so compassionate. And we actually had someone like 2 months ago who came on and talked about co-regulation. And it sounds like co-regulation and mindfulness can kind of like coincide a little bit.
Yeah.
So I love that, you're able to like acknowledge their emotions. And yeah, I mean, no one is ready to work on something if they're not in the right mindset, right? If you didn't sleep all night and then you have to go into work, like you're probably not going to be in the best mood. Or
Right.
on the other side of it, maybe you like got in a car accident on the way, like you're definitely not going to be in the right mindset. Or like, for me, and for instance, I had to run home from the pediatrician's office. I definitely wasn't in the right mindset as
No,
we
yeah.
started out. But practicing some of that like mindfulness and just trying to be present, and we were able to rein it in, which is good. But I love the suggestions. You talked about the thermometer with the characters on it. I love that movie so much. Do you mind sharing where you got that, or was it just something you found online?
Google.
Okay.
And it was actually, I can't even take all the credit. It was one of my friends, one of my school psych friends. We were working together to come up with some strategies for a specific student who loved Inside Out. And she actually found that one. And then I was like, can you make me one too, just to have? And it's been amazing with the preschoolers, because it's a lot more, there's the thermometer that has the board maker faces on it, which in preschool, it's really hard for them to really enjoy the board maker stuff.
Yeah.
So I really like that it's just, those are characters. And you can Google emotional thermometer and Inside Out, and I'm sure you'll find it.
Yeah, that's great. You didn't mention yoga on here. Is that something that you also like
Oh,
incorporate in your sessions? Or maybe you did and I just didn't click on it?
no, I don't think I did. But yes, and actually, and it was this I know where to find. It's Teachers Pay Teachers. It's Jenna Rayburn. So Speech Room News, Teachers Pay Teachers. She has yoga cards that the kids love. And kind of the same idea with the affirmation cards, but like I keep them laminated on rings. So sometimes we like to toss them up and see which yoga card it falls on, and we do that. And then I actually, the dollar section at Target has been like my mindfulness SLP like spot lately, because I find, even like the squishy toys, or I found some foam like floor pads that have yoga poses on them. So they can pick a color of whichever one they want to put on the ground, and then we do that pose, and then we keep building this little, like, it's essentially like a little floor puzzle, but it's foam, so you can step right on it and do the pose. Yeah, no, yoga is and actually I had a little guy last year who had some pretty intense behavioral needs, and that's what I would do with him. A lot of like yoga movement and breathing, because it would kind of help him just reset, because he was very much like just very impulsive and a little bit aggressive. And so it was a great way to kind of incorporate things, but keep the movement in there. Because especially in preschool, movement in therapy for me has been just something that I use to my advantage all the time. Music's another good one too for mindfulness. Just, getting out, even if you don't play an instrument, having kind of music makers or whatever, and taking music breaks, or having them make up songs, or singing about what makes you happy. Or, happy and you know it. That's a fun one.
Oh yeah, I'm singing that like 5 times a day with the baby right now. So that's on replay.
Yeah.
Those are great suggestions. All right, I want to see. Oh, there was one more.
And I talked about that a little bit. Okay. Just feeling sad or mad. That's okay. We can do it. It's all good.
Yeah. And I imagine there's a lot of like actual speech and language goals you can incorporate with these activities too, like following directions.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean,
oh yeah. It's kind of one of those things I definitely, not that I don't want to say I pride myself on it, but I definitely have found like I've found ways to be creative with like, okay, they have a goal on this. We're going to make it work, but we're going to stop and do some breathing, Right. Yeah. Following directions, spatial concepts. I mean,
yeah, I'm sure like Nina mentioned she's doing it in stuttering therapy. So
yeah, you make it a matter of fact thing, and it, because it's all, sometimes what we do, we're doing things that are functional. And so taking mindfulness strategies, I mean, those are functional things. And like you said earlier, Vanita, we can't be in a productive place if our mindset is off. Right. So it's way more important to make sure we're nurturing that first.
Yeah. It's just like how we were saying, like, don't check your email at the beginning of your day. And then if you have a group of students coming in, like, you don't want to like just go straight into the work.
Oh yeah.
To get them ready to work, basically.
No, exactly.
Work. I hate the
I know, but yeah, I'm with you. I don't even like telling them like, first we're going to sing a song, then we're going to work, then we're going to like, I try to brand all of my speech stuff as play.
There you go. That's what it is. I mean, it is. Especially for you with preschool.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. So here's your helpful resources. I wonder if we can click on these and see them. You want me to try?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Look at that. Perfect.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So these are the kids' handouts. I don't know. This one you might be able to see so it just looks like that. Okay. Where they're full pages of, do this or draw this. So very simple, but just helpful. And it's always fun to see what the kids come up with. The next one, I don't know if it will. I don't think I have an image of what it looks like, but there's a description there. Basically, it's just a questionnaire that you go through for yourself. And you're just, kind of checking in. And so the way I made it was for you to be able to do it now. And then maybe there are some mindfulness practices you're like, I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to do 10 days or 12 days or whatever it is of a certain practice. And then you can bring up that questionnaire again and fill it out and say, hey, like I'm sleeping way better, or, oh my gosh, I'm way less stressed, or just certain things. So, and that one is really, if you download it, it has a page where I synthesized all of my gratitude and mindfulness research. And I've linked, not linked, but well, the TED Talk is in there, actually. It's linked in there. But I've also like put all the articles that I got. So if you want to check those out, you can definitely just download that.
That's so awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, of course.
My mouse wanted to disappear. There we go. All right, so we are about to wrap up. We do have a giveaway, so stay on. What I recommend is just maybe screenshotting this page if you're interested in earning CEUs, ASHA CEUs for this webinar, because it is worth 0.1 ASHA CEUs. If you go to bit.ly/peace of mind webinar. All right, let's go to our giveaway. So we're going to do 2 gift cards. We'll do one from the Q&A today, or, everyone that's attending, and then we'll do one from social media. So for the Q&A, how do you want to do it, Marie? We kind of talked about it, I think, before.
We can do was it the birthday?
Yeah. So,
okay.
All right. Go ahead and enter your birthday into the chat, and we'll see whose birthday is the closest to Marie's. Someone was pretty close to mine, but
there's a couple.
They're still coming in.
Oh, and then, okay, we had one go into the Q&A, I see.
Okay, so while we're waiting on the last couple, for social media, if you want a chance to win there, just take a screenshot, picture of this webinar tonight and share it on social media and tag either Marie or myself. We're going to share our Instagram handles in just a second, and we'll announce by, what's today, Monday, by Wednesday, the winner. All right, so let's see. I think that was all of the birthdays. So did you find anybody that was pretty close?
I think it was Nina.
Okay.
She's 12/21 and I'm 12/16.
Oh, awesome. So that was pretty close.
Yeah, I know. At first, Amy was almost there.
All right, Nina. So you can send me an email. I think I know your email, Nina, because we've corresponded before. So I can also reach out to you too. But feel free to send me an email as a reminder as well. And then, yeah, you guys still have the chance to win on social media by sharing. And there's our Instagram handles. But before we go, we did have a lot of people corresponding in the chat throughout. But does anybody have questions for Marie before we go tonight? You can put them in the Q&A or the chat, either one. And you answered like a lot of mine. One thing that I wanted you to like share about, and if you don't have questions, you don't have to stay on. We're pretty much wrapping up. But Marie, you had talked about, like, when we had done the podcast interview before, about your supervisor and how that kind of led you to mindfulness. Do you mind sharing about that little?
Yes. It was my first year of grad school, actually. But it was my autism clinic professor and also supervisor, because I think it's pretty typical for grad programs, but we had an on-site clinic. So she did, like, we were video recorded. So she watched them all and gave us our feedback and everything. But one of the things that, instead of having us do traditional SOAP notes, she had us do journal entries. And she specifically told us she wanted us to just write about how we felt at the beginning of the session, at the end of or in the middle of the session, at the end of the session, and how we were going to go forward. And what I found, because it just happened to be at a very difficult time for me personally outside of school, but it also I really wanted to be an autism clinic. I really wanted to work with autistic children. That was why I started, got into communicative sciences and disorders. And then when I got into it, I was just in this, phase of life that wasn't my favorite. I also was on our diagnostic team at the same time. And I had another client. It was kind of it was a second semester. So it was like, they throw you kind of in that second semester, at least in my program they did. And it was like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I feel like I don't know if I can handle all this. Mm-hmm. And so she had us doing these journal entries. And what I found about halfway through the semester was she was really guiding us to be reflective clinicians, not just, basically because our little guys or our, clients, whether they're adults or little ones, but they're humans. They're not just, soap notes. They're not, you're not just taking numerical data. So she kind of took our minds off of the numerical data or the quantitative data. And she really added quality and had us really focus on how we were adding value and how those clients were adding value for us, in a sense. Because I remember at the end of the semester, she brought me in and we talked about it. And she goes, you've really like looked at yourself as a clinician and a human in your journal entries. And it's really cool to see how you've been self-reflective, how when you've developed plans for the next session, not only are you talking about your client, but you're talking about what you're going to try next because you've learned something about yourself. And that was something that just stuck with me, that ability to be reflective. And I think that definitely gave me a good foundation, going forward with talking about mindfulness and self-reflection and that self-awareness piece. And it was really helpful and just so cool of her.
Yeah. No, I love that story that you shared with me. And I think it's good for supervisors on here. It's good for like private practice clinicians. Amy shared something. I supervise a graduate preschool for kids with autism, and we have our grad clinicians do weekly self-reflections, victories, challenges, goals, questions. We try to lead them to the ability to recognize themselves as professionals.
Yep. And that was basically it. I love that. And it definitely, I have yet to take on a graduate student, but it's something that I will definitely be doing with them because it's just is so helpful for me.
Do you have something like a resource like that for clinicians, like for SLPs? I feel like that's something you should create, like some type of reflective journal for therapy.
I think so. I think I should get on that. Huh? I would definitely say the first step would be what I shared already with everybody. Because the idea is, whether or not you gratitude journal, it's kind of like start doing something like that, start doing a reflective practice, and then keep checking in with those things, maybe use them as prompts. But I like that idea and I'll definitely have to get on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Marie. I know you say no to things to protect yourself, but I'm so glad you said yes to this.
Oh, of course.
And thank you guys for coming tonight and watching on Facebook. We will be posting this up on YouTube as well. So if you came in later or you want to go back and look at something, you can catch it on there too. But have a great night, everybody. And thanks, Marie, again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye, guys.